Hi, my video today is going to be on Russia. I've talked a little bit about North Korea, I've talked about China, and foreign policy in general is a very fascinating topic for me to discuss, but it's a lot to talk about in one little video, so I'd like to break it up. I'd like to talk about Russia. The Cold War didn't really end, especially not when you have someone like Putin in charge who was in the KGB and a strong believer in the Soviet system. He was always savvy on foreign intelligence. Remember, he worked in East Germany. He was responsible for making sure that East Germany stayed in the Warsaw Pact and the East Germans cooperated with everything the Soviets needed them to do, and to make sure that NATO didn't expand and make sure it kept them, try to, the Soviet whole philosophy there was keeping America out of Europe as much as possible. So now he's in charge of the Russian Federation. But why would we really think the Cold War has ended? The, Putin and people of his generation, they haven't forgotten. They haven't forgotten the power and the influence Russia has had in the past. And they want it back. Putin has said the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century was the breakup of the Soviet Union. The biggest geopolitical tragedy? How about World War One? The League of Nations failing to prevent more tragedies, World War II, the Cuban Missile Crisis that almost destroyed the planet. You could go on and on about things that were terrible. I don't think freeing Eastern Europe and allowing Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Georgia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, the Ukraine, allowing more, at least the idea of freedom for those countries. You know, some of them really made a great stride. Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. God, I feel bad for Ukraine because they're still struggling so much. But it's just disgusting how the West placates Russia and treats them as an equal to a certain extent. I really appreciated Obama talking about how Russia is not a superpower. You know, he was willing to speak a little truth to that. They are not a superpower. They are a regional power. And I think that we give them power when we talk to them and talk about them like they're still a superpower. We need to treat them what they are. They're a regional bully, and they're manipulating the United States in amazing fashion. No one else so far has been able to come close to the way that they manipulate us, especially obviously the Trump administration and all of his cronies. So what does Russia want? What is Russia looking for? In their immediate area, they want back the territory that they had. You know, there's plenty of talk about them doing war exercises and having military plans to eventually take back Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, which is part of NATO. So they need to weaken NATO. How do they weaken NATO? They certainly had a hand in the election of Brexit. The weaker the EU gets, the weaker NATO gets, the easier it is for them to rise. They will never forget, and the fact that they feel stabbed in the back by NATO expanding after the collapse of the Soviet Union. They're so pissed about that. So they need to weaken NATO. They need to weaken the EU. They gotta make sure that Britain exits. They've gotta, sow the seed of discontent in Spain and other areas of Europe. Just divide Europe as much as possible. Divide the United States. Their Russian trolls were pro-conservative on Facebook and social media, and they were also pro-liberal because they just needed us to fight. Certainly, Trump will do whatever Putin asks him to do, but they still needed America in general to be divided. How they work with China is interesting. I did mention before, the whole North Korea thing, complete theater, because China just wants to have us focus on North Korea so that they can fully take over the South China Sea and get all that territory down there. And they can probably also eventually take over Taiwan while the Americans focus on other parts. But the weaker the West gets, that's what they need. They want to weaken the West, divide the EU, divide NATO, make sure we're all scattered so that they can have their strategic execution of their long-term vision. The Cold War isn't over. Not by a long shot. Russia has always been and will continue to be a threat. The best case scenario is for the Russians, which they can't because they don't have free elections, not even now, nor will they probably in our lifetimes, for them eventually to stop this crap and become part of the world of nations as a whole. Maybe even one day they could join the EU, but I know I'm obviously smoking something if I talk about like that, but they need to be a part of Europe. That's really the long-term best thing for them. Do they need to be a superpower? No. The EU, the way that it could be, the way that it was, until Russia really started playing around, that kind of strength of countries that used to hate each other, used to be at war for centuries, working together, it's a great example for the world. Germany and France, they went into so many wars, working so closely together, it's a great example. It's a shame Britain left, and I really hope Britain can find a way to undo the Brexit. That's the best thing for the world right now. Thanks.